It's Mindy. Welcome back to the Missing Link channel. Every unsolved mystery, missing person, conspiracy theory, and urban legend is just one missing link away from being solved. Hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of our videos and help us find that missing link. Today we're going to discuss an unsolved mystery. We are diving into the most famous mystery of the sea. This mysterious voyage has gone unsolved for over 147 years. What happened aboard the Mary Celeste on November 25th, 1872? Let's go back. New York, 1872. It was a completely different time. What do you picture in your mind? I picture, of course, in black and white. I picture a man with a black suit and a top hat with a soft bow tie. I picture a woman wearing a bonnet with a lace dress with a bustle, and she's carrying a handkerchief. Horse carriages line the brick-laid streets. I picture a quieter time. People travel by railway, horses, and boats. When I think of boating today, I think of a recreational activity, a time to relax with my family, enjoy the sunshine, and maybe take a dip in the water. However, in 1872, shipping was a way of life. New York was one of the busiest ports due to the merchant shipping between the United States and Europe. A captain would search for cargo that needed to be shipped overseas. The voyage would begin, and after delivery, the captain would start again to try to find cargo that needed returned back to his home. Boats were much more fragile than they are today. They were sailing vessels, multiple sails mounted to masts. The sails used wind to power them through the sea. They were made of wood, and unfortunately, they leaked. The boats had pumps to remove water below deck during the voyage. This was hard work for the crew, and they most likely worked in shifts. Being a captain was a dangerous profession. It was common for ships to be lost or abandoned at sea. There was no radio communication, no satellite imagery like there is today. In today's times, a captain would review satellite images to help them figure out the best path to avoid severe weather. The winter storms in the Atlantic Ocean can be extremely serious. It is very common for a dangerous situation to arise on the voyage, and the captain has to use his previous sailing knowledge to help him during those situations. The Mary Celeste has many interesting stories to tell. This brigantine was built in 1861 in Canada and was originally named the Amazon. Its maiden voyage was May 18, 1861. Its first captain was Robert McClellan. He fell ill and died of pneumonia on that ship's maiden voyage. Over the next 6 years, the Amazon had 3 collisions and a fire. Needless to say, the boat did not have good luck. A few years later, it was sold to another gentleman who registered the boat in New York and renamed it the Mary Celeste. During that time, the ship underwent major construction. In 1872, the ship again found another owner. His name was James Winchester. He planned to use the vessel to move cargo between the United States and Europe along the Atlantic Ocean. At the time of the voyage, the Mary Celeste was owned by Winchester, a man named Benjamin Briggs, and a few various other small investors. Who was the captain of the Mary Celeste on that fateful voyage? His name was Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. He was born in Massachusetts on April 24th, 1835, 185 years ago. He was the son of a sea captain and a deeply religious man. In 1862, he married Sarah Elizabeth Cobb, a minister's daughter. This was definitely a sea family. In fact, on their honeymoon, they took a different ship to Europe. A son, Arthur, was born in September 1865, and a daughter, Sophia Matilda, was born 5 years later in October of 1870. Briggs was 37 years old at the time of the voyage. He was an experienced captain who was looking forward to retirement in a few years. Briggs wanted his ever-growing family to be able to accompany him on voyages, so he had the cabin remodeled. At the time, his wife Sarah was 30, and his daughter Sophia was 2. His son Arthur, now 7, was actually left behind to stay with his grandmother because he had just started school. The Mary Celeste was approximately 103 feet long, 25 feet wide, and 16 feet deep. It weighed 282 tons. In early November 1872, the captain, crew, and passengers of the Mary Celeste were waiting for the weather to improve to get the voyage started. The cargo was 1,701 barrels of crude alcohol, which would be used to fortify wine. The cargo was to be delivered to Genoa, Italy. Crude alcohol was known to be one of the most dangerous cargo at that time. Before the ship sailed, Briggs wrote a letter to his mother, where he explained that he was extremely satisfied with his crew. Around this time, Captain Briggs actually had dinner with another gentleman named Captain David Morehouse. He was captain of the ship called the De Gratia. Morehouse was getting his ship ready, and that ship would follow in the exact same path as the Mary Celeste. However, he was still waiting for his cargo, so he would be days behind. Remember this name, though, because it will appear later in the story. Finally, the day arrives, November 7th, 1872. Captain Briggs set off on his first voyage of the Mary Celeste. Little did he know it would be his last. 19 days later, Captain Briggs, his crew, his wife, and his young daughter would disappear under mysterious circumstances, never to be seen again. When they left New York that day, bound for Italy, there were 10 people aboard. Captain Briggs, his wife, his young daughter, Sophia, and 7 crew members. The first mate was Albert Richardson. He was 28 years old, married, and had traveled with Captain Briggs before. The second mate was Andrew Gilling. He was a 25-year-old and was born in New York. The cook and steward was Edward Head. He was 23 years old and newly married. The final 4 members of the crew were from Germany. The first was Arian Martins. He was 35 years old, and his wife was expecting their second child. The second was Gottlieb Gondenshaw, and he was 23 years old. And finally, there were 2 brothers. The first brother was named Volkert Lorentzen. He was 29 years old, and his wife was expecting their first child. The second brother was named Boy Lorentzen, and he was recently engaged and planning on being married when he got home. According to the ship's logbook, the first 2 weeks of the voyage were met with harsh weather. They went through at least 3 major storms. I cannot imagine being in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on that ship in the middle of just one of those storms, a little less 3. On November 24th, 18 days into the voyage, harsh weather was upon them again. There was extreme winds, torrential rain, and rough seas. All hands would have been required on deck. However, the next morning, November 25th, 1872, the clouds departed and the storm passed. However, the wind was still blowing. Most of the crew was probably trying to sleep or grab a meal. About 5 a.m., someone spotted land. However, the land in view was St. Maria, which can be seen 20 miles away at sea. The last entry on the ship's logbook was that morning. It stated that they were in sight of St. Maria, which is one of the Azores Islands. The island lies within 1,000 miles west of Portugal. The ship's logbook did not mention any trouble that morning. 10 days later, and approximately 444 miles away, on December 5th, 1872, Captain David Morehouse of the British ship, the De Gratia, was informed by a crew member that there was a ship off in the distance who appeared to be in trouble. Captain Morehouse decided to investigate. The De Gratia had left New York some 21 days earlier. The De Gratia viewed the ship for hours, and it kept getting closer and closer. They noticed no one on the decks. The ship appeared to be not in control, and the ship was not sending out any type of a distress signal. They finally got close enough to realize that the boat was a Mary Celeste. Captain David Morehouse immediately sent a boarding party in a small rowboat to go investigate the ship of his friend, Benjamin Briggs. When they boarded the Mary Celeste, they realized the ship had been deserted. There wasn't a soul on board. The crew appeared to have vanished into thin air. The sails were still up, the cargo was intact, and their personal items appeared to be undisturbed. There was food and water on board that could have lasted up to 6 months. However, there were 2 hatches open, and the crew described the ship as a wet mess. Charles Lund, who was a crew member that boarded the boat, said that there were no other boats on board. However, it looked like there had been one, that was maybe attached at one point to the boat's main hatch, but it was no longer there. There was about 3 feet of water in the hull. However, that wasn't enough to cause grave concern. There were 2 pumps on board, and these pumps would remove water from the hull that had leaked during the voyage. Like I said earlier, boats during that time leaked, so it was very common to have some form of water in the hull. The pumps went from above deck to the deepest part of the hull. However, one of the pumps aboard the Mary Celeste was not working and was actually dismantled on deck. The only thing missing from the Mary Celeste besides the crew was a compass, a rope, a navigation book, and various papers. There was one account of someone stating that a rope was seen trailing behind the Mary Celeste, but I could not confirm that. Captain David Morehouse could not figure out why the ship had been abandoned. He split up his crew and they sailed both vessels to the closest port, which was 800 miles away. They arrived on December 13, 1872, 8 days after finding the Mary Celeste. The British authorities found no blood or evidence of foul play on the ship. However, when unloading, it was discovered that 9 barrels of the crude alcohol was actually empty. So were the barrels never filled in the first place, or had they leaked on the voyage? What happened on that fateful day, November 25th, 1872? Something led Briggs, an experienced captain, to quickly abandon his ship within sight of land. Abandoning your ship would be a last resort. The ship is still your best protection from the elements. Something awful must have happened that day. Was it foul play? Was it fraud? Was it supernatural? Was it a tragic accident? There are actually more than a dozen theories, 14 in all. The first 11 we can get through fairly quickly. Here they are. Number 1, an earthquake or a seaquake. However, that can be easily dismissed because there was none reported in that area on that day. Number 2, an accident brought on by a drunken crew. However, the alcohol on board wasn't alcohol that was ready to be consumed. It was crude alcohol. Also, Captain Briggs did not drink, and I can't imagine him letting his crew have a massive wild party after they are up all night fighting a storm. Winchester, the main owner of the ship, said that there is no way Captain Briggs would have abandoned the ship unless it was to save his life, his family life, and the life of his crew members. He also stated that the second in command, Albert Richardson, would have been able to take over command of the ship. So how did 10 people disappear without the sign of a struggle? I do not believe the theory of an accident because of a drunken crew is plausible either. Number 3, a mutiny aboard. This is unlikely due to the short voyage and small crew members. The cargo was not of high value and was not one that could easily be disposed of. A movie made in 1930 blamed the 2 German brothers. The main reason they were blamed was because no personal items of theirs was found aboard the boat. So it was assumed they did something and took their personal items with them. However, it was discovered that their personal items were actually lost on another voyage earlier that year. They had signed on to the Mary Celeste to get home. I do not believe it was a mutiny that caused this mystery. Number 4, Briggs did it himself. A member of the boarding party of the Dei Gratia noticed on board a sword within a sheath. The sword had dark stains on it. It was debated whether these stains were rust or blood. A doctor examined the sword, and he determined that the stains were in fact rust. Also, how did Briggs kill 7 crew members, turn on his wife and daughter, possibly kill himself, and have no evidence of foul play? There didn't appear to be a struggle or any blood. I believe we can cross that theory off the list. Number 5, insurance fraud. But this is unlikely. Briggs would have had to kill his entire crew and then abandon ship with his family. Where would they have gone on that small boat? How were they not seen for years? And more importantly, they would have had to abandon their son. Nope, that didn't happen. Number 6, pirates. These would have been the worst pirates in history. The ship wasn't looted, nothing was taken, so I think we can say that pirates were not involved. 7, aliens. Yeah, I don't think so. 8, time travel. Seriously? No. Number 9, the Bermuda Triangle. But this was nowhere near the Bermuda Triangle, so I think we can just cross that one off the list. Number 10, the Mary Celeste was cursed. 3 captains of the ship have died. 2 from illness, and 1 is still missing. Unfortunately, this type of work is just dangerous, and people died aboard ships every single day. Number 11, a deep sea monster or animal. I am amazed how much research and detail I found regarding this theory. A giant octopus or colossal squid, which I found out can be over 50 feet in length, had to have attacked the Mary Celeste. But instead of hiding in the ship, the crew decided to get into the very waters where the animal resides to escape. I can't even continue. That one has to be out. Now we get into the plausible theories. Number 12. The British ship, the De Gratia, planned this whole thing for salvage money. However, the boat left 8 days after the Mary Celeste. Unless they had warp speed, I don't think they could have caught up. Plus, they were taking a huge risk because part of salvage is proving that the owners will not return. Also, the legal registration for the boat was not found on board, and this is required to get salvage. However, they did end up getting 15% of salvage though. However, I don't think this is likely because I just don't think they could have caught up to the ship. Winchester, the main owner of the ship, came up with this theory. He believed there was an explosion caused by the 1,701 barrels of crude alcohol aboard the ship. He believed the alcohol heated up in the voyage from New York City into the Atlantic Ocean. He believed that the alcohol heated up during the voyage and the pressure blew off the hatches. Then Briggs had everyone escape quickly. However, there were no signs of the hatch blowing off. And the temperatures between the two areas are not that extreme to cause this to happen. And there was no proof of a fire or an explosion on board. Here is a most likely theory I believe, and it has a similar alternative as well. Let's go back to that day, November 25th, 1872. The captain, crew, and passengers had an awful evening trying to fight off that storm and survive another day at sea. That morning the weather was improving. I bet some were sleeping, some were grabbing a bite to eat, and others relaxing in their quarters or on deck. The captain wrote nothing about trouble in the ship's logbook. What happened that fateful morning? The state of mind of the captain and the crew is so important. What we know today is probably completely different than what they knew. We know that one of the two pumps was not working and was taken apart. The pumps could have been clogged. The previous voyage of the Mary Celeste was carrying coal, which could easily have clogged the pumps with dust and residue. The Mary Celeste had also just recently undergone construction, so there's a chance that the pumps could be clogged with dust and carpenter shavings as well. So one pump was trying to remove the seepage for the entire ship. Because the ship has cargo that completely takes up the hull, it is hard for the crew members to see how much water is below deck. So there is a device called a sounding rod. It is used to determine the amount of water in the hold. They can use the sounding rod on deck to determine this. It is a metal or iron rod, and the crew members put ash on the bottom of it and place it into the ship's hold. When it is pulled back up, they can determine how much water is below deck. They can determine this by seeing how much ash is left on the sounding rod. When the boat was discovered 9 days later, it was found that there was 3 feet of water in the ship's hull. This is not enough water to make a captain nervous. However, did the Mary Celeste get an incorrect reading on the sounding rod? Did they think there was more water in the ship's hold than there truly was? And were they afraid that the ship was about to sink? Let's pretend that's exactly what happened. Captain Briggs could have believed that the ship was taking on more water than one pump could have handled. He may have truly believed that the ship was going to sink. If that was the case, what would he have done? He ordered some of the crew members to get along board. The other crew members were told to get supply and gear. Captain Briggs headed to get navigational instruments. They didn't even take time to lower the sails. So Benjamin, Sarah, Sophia, Albert, Andrew, Edward, Volkert, Arian, Boy, and Gottlieb all crowded into the small boat. They would have planned to row to land. They could easily have gotten to that island within a few hours, but something happened while they were heading to land. In the Azores that morning, the weather changed and another storm blew in, with torrential rain and extreme winds. The tiny crowded boat was now at the mercy of the Atlantic Ocean. Heavy seas could have easily made that boat capsize, and all aboard could have been tossed into the cold water to perish. That definitely could have been what happened, but here's another similar alternative. On the morning of November 25th, 1872, after an awful evening at sea, the captain could have decided to open the hatches. Most likely the hatches had remained closed most, if not all of the voyage because of the bad weather. Captain Briggs had also never had cargo of this kind before. A rush of fumes came out of the hull due to the 8 barrels that had leaked. Captain Briggs did not know at that time what we do. He did not know that 8 barrels had leaked. Captain Briggs would have to assume that there was something wrong with his cargo and the 1,701 barrels of crude alcohol. The cargo was loaded within inches of the deck. The strong fumes may have been enough to alert the crew. The captain most likely gave the same orders as the previous scenario to get the boat ready and abandon ship. The captain or crew members may have come up with a different idea though this time. Someone came up with the idea to make a coil out of the rope as a tow line and wait for the danger to pass. They all got into that small boat and put as much distance between themselves and the Mary Celeste as the rope would let them. Just in case the boat exploded, they would hopefully be far enough away. However, the morning calm turned into a violent storm once again. This happened frequently in the Azores during the afternoons. The storm and wind could have caused the rope to snap and become separated from the Mary Celeste, leaving the occupants and the small boat being blown from land and farther into the Atlantic Ocean. No matter how it happened, 10 people suffered an awful death, frightened, cold, and alone, perishing in the unrelenting sea. I am sure Captain Briggs regretted taking his wife and small daughter on the voyage. Before sailing, Captain Briggs had written to his mother. In his letter, he talked about Sophia having a favorite book, but it wasn't a normal book. It was a book full of photos of their family. That book was never located. So I imagine as Sarah quickly packed, she grabbed that book because she knew it would make Sophia happy. I imagine Sophia on the small boat, sitting on her mother's lap and looking through that book, seeing images of her family, including her brother, her grandmother, unfortunately people she would never see again. Their son Arthur was left behind. I cannot imagine how hard his life must have been, never truly knowing what happened to his father, his mother, or his little sister. There is a memorial for the victims of the Mary Celeste at Spencer Island in Nova Scotia. The plaque on the monument read, "The Mary Celeste." Nearby, the world's most famous mystery ship, the Mary Celeste, a brigantine, was built and launched in 1861. Was first named the Amazon. In 1868, she was driven ashore in a storm, and after being repaired, was renamed the Mary Celeste. In December 1872, she was discovered at sea, with all sails set and everything in order, but not a person was on board or ever found. As I was researching, I came across many vessels that suffered the same fate as the Mary Celeste. I had no idea this was such a common occurrence during this time. In April of 1849, a ship called the Hermania was found, with the crew, captain, wife, and child missing, just like this one. In February of 1855, a boat called the Marathon was found abandoned, with all crew missing. In October of 1955, a boat was found with their entire crew of 25 missing and the ship abandoned. I had no idea how often this type of tragedy occurred. Do you think the crew and passengers of the Mary Celeste perished due to a tragic accident or something much more sinister? Drop your ideas and beliefs in the comments. I would love to know what you think. Yes, I stated my opinion in this video. I think the last scenario is the most likely one. However, I have no idea. Any of them truly could have happened. Maybe not aliens. Give this video a thumbs up if you like this type of video and want to hear more Unsolved Mysteries. If you are not yet subscribed, but you like this type of content, hearing about unsolved mysteries, missing people, conspiracy theories, urban legends, the list goes on and on. Remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content. I did a lot of research on this topic, but I will put a few places that I found helpful in the description box if you want to do your own research or learn even more. Thank you for joining me here today. If you have a topic you would like to see discussed on this channel, drop it in the comments or send me an email. As always, have a wonderful day. Watch out for each other and keep looking for that missing link. Love ya, and see you in my next video.